Hello and welcome to my flipped video. I'm Dr. Kajal, and the entire idea of this flipped video is to give you a little insight into the concepts of diversity, equity and inclusion. So this flipped video will talk about number one, how it all began. Secondly, a slight explanation on all three. And then I'll be asking you to do a few activities on your own to let me know how far you have understood these concepts. So let's start from the beginning. If I talk about the concept of diversity, how did it all begin? Interestingly, you would know that it has its roots in the 1960s when, in fact, the evolution of ethical standards in organizations, in companies began increasing. It has its roots in the civil rights movement. And as I've stated earlier, this evolved into a concept which is known as diversity. So if I talk of diversity, what does it basically talk about? Very simply put, it is the concept of recognizing and fairly dealing with people's differences. Now, these differences include race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, age, ethnicity, cultural background, education, language, socioeconomic status, abilities, and a lot more. In 1990 came in the term inclusion. Now, what did this talk about? Well, this basically spoke about the fair treatment of those who have been historically excluded or limited from public life. And in recent years, we now have a term and the concept of equity, which talks about giving an equal treatment to all in terms of opportunities. And this is how we now have DEI spoken of as in one breath. Okay, now I'll give you a little insight into the fact that as of now, there are a few things which go against the concept of DEI. It has been under the scanner, and in various states in USA, this has in fact backfired, and there are various laws which have been passed on it. What are those laws? What are those instances is something you'll have to figure out. So this is the first task for you. Moving ahead, if we talk about DEI, the basic ethos, as stated by Eric Fromm, he said that as a leader, you should focus on the concept of DEI as an ethos from the mode of being instead of the mode of having. And he further stated, as a well-known philosopher, that the core requirement of DEI in leadership is in fact effective communication. Interestingly, in 1983, we had Jeffrey Leach, who in fact proposed the politeness principle, and this principle in fact promotes DEI. Now, the functions of the politeness principles are out here in front of you. Number one, the basic function is to minimize conflicts, especially in diverse groups, organizations, and communities. The second function of this principle is to establish feelings of inclusion, social relationship, regardless of people's differences. And the third is to provide advancement for each person by giving the right kind of support. So these are the three principles on which the politeness principle rests. Moving ahead, this comprises of 6 maxims. So the very first maxim is that of modesty, wherein this maxim particularly states that you should minimize praising yourself in front of others, and you should in fact need no self-validation. If you're good, you know that you're good, you don't need to harp about it. So this is the modesty principle, simple enough. Sympathy concept, well, it talks about more about the fact that you should be able to understand the point of view of the other person by being in his or her shoes. So ideally, it is looking at a particular situation or a scenario from the point of view from the other person and being sympathetic towards them. Tact, in fact, is the ability to try and understand how to cut across the ice without imposing yourself or your views on others. This maxim has been termed as tact. Agreement, in fact, is a maxim that says that you should go to the extent of agreeing to others by not imposing on them. And similarly, it does not mean that you should agree to everything that everybody is saying, but if you've got a way to put across, you should fall back on the maxim of tact. Generosity basically means that you should be willing to give yourself selflessly in terms of listening to what the other person has to say, in terms of your time, and in terms of appreciation. And the last maxim, which is of approbation, basically states that you should avoid criticizing or ridiculing people. And of course, doing so in public is a strict no. If you wish to correct somebody, you should actually do so in private. So these are the 6 maxims of the politeness principles. And as Sundar Pichai says, that a diverse mix of voices leads to better discussions, decisions, and outcomes for everyone. Now, food for thought in your case is, in addition to what I had asked earlier in the flipped video, the first question that you're supposed to follow it up with is, explain how communication can strengthen diversity and inclusion at work. The second is, how are companies inculcating DEI in their workplace through verbal communication, non-verbal communication, and pronouns. And the last question that I want you to think on is, how are they addressing aggressions and microaggressions? Now, for the last 2 questions, that is question 2 and question 3, I want you to be specific in terms of organizations. That is, if you're talking about DEI in a workplace, be specific to say, for example, Google does this, Infosys does this, so on and so forth. So we are focusing on being specific over here. I hope through this flip video you have understood how diversity evolved, how inclusion and equity came into being, and I have given you enough food for thought in terms of what you need to work upon. So see you in class. Thank you so much for your time. That would be all.